Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, welcome. Thank you for coming along this evening. My name's James, and tonight we have the second in the series of our Melbourne forums, looking at the question, one size does not fit all. So we're going to explore that further this evening with our expert panel and with your help, very importantly. Quick question, who was here at the last forum we had a couple months ago? Look at that return rate. Fantastic. Well done. There's a special prize for you later. Not sure what it is yet, but I'll make it up as we go. So thank you for coming back. For those of you who weren't here last time, this is a forum where Schiavello is really putting a focus on innovation and how can we address the challenges out there in the workplace, managing diversity, dealing with the constant change and the fact that change is constant, and how do we address those when we look at the physical workplace. How do we design a workplace and make it effective and so that we get the outcomes we need as business leaders and also as designers consulting into business? So we're going to explore those questions this evening with the help of our panel, and as I said, with your help. Did I say that before? So with your help as well. So we are going to have some roving mics, and that's not mics with little legs. There's people who are going to move them around for you. And we really encourage you to take some notes on the way through. That's why I've given you a big, thick notebook there. If you fill that up, there's also a special prize. So take notes of any questions you'd like to ask, note down things of interest throughout the evening, and then we really encourage you to throw your hand up and ask some questions. We had a very successful night last night in Sydney, and we said at the end we're sure it'll be much better in Melbourne, because of course it's Melbourne, right? So that's what we expect. So once again, welcome on behalf of Schiavello. So the structure for this evening, what we're going to be doing is we're going to ask our panellists to present to us. 10 minutes is all you got each, and at the end of that 10 minutes I'll pass to the next presenter, so we go through the whole three, and at the end of their presentations I'm going to ask them to comment on what they heard from each other. So any topics or queries they have that they want to challenge and put it out there. The thing is, we do want to have it challenging. If it's a bit controversial, we don't mind. We want to get a bit of frisson, bit of engaged conversation happening this evening. And so then we encourage you to do the same. So challenge, ask the direct question, and that's what our panellists love the best. So the idea that you can walk out with new thoughts, stimulated around what you can do going back to your workplace and to your challenge every day, and having learnt something and enjoyed the evening as well. So once again, thank you. Okay, so also I should mention we're going to be able to continue this conversation post this evening. So there will be an online forum. So if you have questions you didn't get to ask or comments you'd like to make, once again keep those notes, and we'd love to hear about them in the online forum, and you'll all have access to that post tonight. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get Eric Dodd to talk to us, and we also have we have three speakers. So we have Eric Dodd, who I'll introduce more fulsomely in a moment. And then we also have Kerry Field, who I'll also introduce, and Dr. Jacqueline Vischer as well. So first of all, we're going to get Eric Dodd to talk to us and share his thoughts. So let me give you a bit of background on Eric before he asks me to get up and talk. So Eric is a Fellow of the Australian Institute of Company Directors and a Fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants. So Eric has held managing director roles and CEO and directorial roles at some of Australia's largest insurance, finance and banking organisations. Names I'm sure you'll be familiar with. With a Bachelor of Economics major in Statistics and Accounting, Eric spent 6 years as managing director and CEO of Bupa Australia Group, which was incorporating MBF and HBA, so many of you may remember that merger. And 4 years as managing director of NRMA Insurance and CEO of the NRMA Group. Over his career, he has also held key executive positions such as Chief Financial Officer of NatWest Markets, Executive Director at Legal & General, General Manager of New Zealand Bank and Australian Bank, and Chairman of Odyssey House. So a wonderful track record. Eric has been involved in 2 major relocations as CEO, which is really relevant to our conversation tonight, and he'll talk about that in some detail, where he utilised the relocation and its design as a strategy for organisational cultural change. So you'll get lots of interesting information from Eric on that. Wanting to pursue a career as a non-executive director in 2008, Eric stepped down as MD of Bupa Australia and is now chairman of First American Title Insurance and director of HealthScope and Director of the Credit Corp Group, Director of Clean Up Australia and Clean Up the World. So without further ado, if you could put a warm Melbourne welcome together for Eric. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, James. I'm not actually going to stand up this evening. I feel much more relaxed talking to you from here. And thank you all for coming along. I've been asked to talk to the issue of the role that the workplace environment plays in organisational effectiveness. And I guess it's probably no surprise that I think it plays an enormous role. And in some cases, I think it probably is the most important aspect of managing organisations, especially through great change, both culturally and directionally and strategically for companies. I thought the best way of actually going about explaining why I feel that way, because a lot of people probably are surprised when you look at all the other aspects of managing large corporations and how important they are, getting strategy right, getting your products lined up, understanding customers and so on. All of those things are important. It's all in a mix, but at times, in my view, the physical environment really becomes the most important factor. The example that James alluded to is the one of NRMA Insurance Group. That's why they changed it to IAG, because people couldn't get their tongues around it. A company that I joined in 1996, so some 13 years ago. I joined it at a time when the organisation was at its lowest ebb, really. It's an organisation. NRMA has always been the largest general insurer in Australia, still is today. But at that time, it had just been through a failed demutualisation in '94. Some of you may remember that. Very controversially failed in the courts. What that did to the organisation was really knock all of the enthusiasm, all of the morale out of it. It was something that really should have happened. The organisation had geared itself up to a new phase of its existence, and it was defeated very unexpectedly in the courts. So I came into the environment as finance director initially and was really faced with an organisation that, as I say, the staff morale was at a very, very low ebb. There was no direction in the organisation, no strategy. There was certainly no growth, and it really was an organisation going nowhere. And I very soon, I guess, came to the view that what we had to do was change dramatically virtually every aspect of that company. To move again to a listed environment, which is really where the company had to go. Any company that wants to grow needs capital. That's why you don't see too many mutuals left these days. We won't go into those reasons. That's not why we're here this evening. Happy to talk afterwards, by the way, if you want to on that. But really it had to change in so many aspects and get back to that path, taking it down the path to become a listed entity, to give itself the capital, the exposure to markets and the worldwide presence that it took further on. Now to get there, we really had to bring all of the workplace, all of our human resource within the organisation along with us in that ride. And as I say, that was something that was very, very difficult. The senior management were totally demotivated. They were running little fiefdoms, a bunch of general managers all running their own shows. And to get everyone to believe that change was inevitable, in my view, required a drastic change to our workplace environment. For a start, I discovered on my first day there that we were actually spread over 7 different buildings. That was the head office, not the rest of the organisation, the head office itself. I was told that as finance director I was in a building 3 blocks down the road from where the CEO lived. The CEO worked and lived sometimes. And which I thought was astounding. I mean, finance directors meant to work hand in glove with the CEO, let alone all the other parts of the organisation. We were in Sydney last night at the Hilton Hotel, and I said one part of the organisation, in fact, were housed within the Hilton Hotel complex, the CDP business. They never saw the rest of the company, didn't feel part of it. There was really no feel within the organisation. They all belonged to this one big entity. So we set out really to change all of that. And the first thing we did was say, okay, we've got to consolidate all of this into one location, a massive relocation of some 4,000 people into one building, into a totally new environment, leaving absolutely everything behind. We had a philosophy that we would not take one paperclip across to the new entity. We had a philosophy the new building. We had a philosophy of saying that we had 650 offices in the combined 7 buildings, 5 of which we owned, by the way, and 2 of which we leased. In itself a logistical nightmare. And we cut the offices down from 650 to less than 50. That excluded the CEO, of course. We can go into that later on too, Peter. It was a huge exercise, but it was an exercise that was very necessary because it sent a very strong signal to the rest of the organisation that we were serious about change. Taking everyone out of what were pretty decrepit in some cases environments, certainly there was very little synergy between any parts of the organisation, and putting them into one fresh, new, invigorating workspace did an enormous amount for the morale of the organisation, did an enormous amount to lift energy levels within all of our staff. But most importantly, in my view, it really opened everyone's eyes and a level of acceptance and anticipation to the changes we had to make to the organisation. And it's for that reason that I think it is so vital a part of how we went about changing the company. Once people could see visually that we were serious about changing where the organisation was going, once they saw the enormous benefits that came from just changing the physical environment, their capacity and willingness, more importantly, to adapt and accept all the other changes that we were going to have to put the organisation through in terms of culture, moving to a more performance-based culture for the organisation, changing the business mix within the company, growing the organisation, making a number of different acquisitions that would get the company to a point where it was a saleable, if you like, commodity to the investment markets internationally. And when we finally did, and jumping ahead a little, when we finally did take the NRMA Group to a public listing, it was 5 times oversubscribed because of all the changes we'd made to that group. If you'd have said that back in '96 that you were going to do that, people would have laughed at you, and people did. People said it was impossible for us to do. But we did, and we changed that. We changed the business mix. We changed the performance culture enormously. We changed some of the personnel, but we changed, as I say, very importantly, the work environment itself, which opened up everything else to the new world that NRMA became. And for that reason, I think the physical environment is the most important aspect of managing a change as big as that. It is also, on a continuing level, a very important aspect of managing the total mix in terms of organisational effectiveness. People care about the environment. If you're working in a place like that, I'm clearly passionate about making sure people have really good workplace environment to operate within, because I've seen the difference it can make. At MBF, which I went to after the NRMA, we had a what do we call these things, Kerry? The way you measure. No, they're not KPIs. I forget the word for it for a second. But it's a way people. It's a measure of cultural sort of acceptance. The word will come to me in a second. But it was at a level of 29%. Engagement, that's the right word for it, engagement. We had an engagement level of 29% within the MBF group when we started moving them out into a totally new environment, changing the shape of the business, moving to a more performance-based culture and so on. We ended up in the 80s within 2 years. That is the impact it can have, and that is how important, in my view, the workplace environment is in managing an organisation, as I say, particularly if you want to take it through a massive change such as the one that we had there. I think I might leave it there probably at the end of my time now, but clearly there will be a number of questions you might have, as we had in Sydney last night, on all aspects of that. So thank you, James.
Great. Thank you, Eric.